global shadow work.
Yeah.
Like shadow work on a global scale, just like there's, emerging a moral imperative to do personal shadow work to integrate my own self. It seems like, here is emerging the capacity and evaluation for shadow work integration on a global scale.
Absolutely. Part of the problems, of course, is that if you actually looked at developed or developing countries, and you look just at leadership, probably the biggest problem with all of them is their shadow issues. It's those shadow issues that, drive people into power-crazed modes, into hypocrisy, into lying about, what they're doing and what they say should be done, in terms of how people feel good about themselves, and a lot of the really untruthful, lying, put it bluntly, things that they engage in. If it's Republicans, then it's some sort of sexual problem. And I mean, but it's on and on and on. And the issue about shadow work is not just for upscale yuppies that don't have anything better to do with their time than talk about themselves and think about themselves and go to a therapist and discuss it on their cocktail parties Friday night. These are genuine, real problems, and when you realize the extent of it around the world, it's scary. These things are really, really out there. And of course, we have cultural shadows, and we're seeing now in the Russia-Ukraine area, explosive stuff going on, and you can see an enormous amount of shadow stuff in terms of cultural shadow stuff, and how each of these cultures are used to looking at something, areas in themselves that they're really kind of unaware of, and these things are clashing. This happens all the time, all the way back to the Crusades. So that's a real issue, and it's probably, in terms of problem causing, it's probably even worse than coming in with green values and dumping it on a poorly amber based, because that's something that we can, at least there's the hope that we can become aware of that and start to alter it to some degree. Going in and altering shadow material, you can see how that would go. It's like, Saddam Hussein, over here a minute. We'd like you to spend 3 times a week, hour each time, talking about your mother and all the bad things your father did to you, and there will be crying. So make sure nobody's watching. If that's what, we don't want this to show up on YouTube with you sobbing about what you did. Okay, so we'll watch that. And chances of that happening is about. So those things are out there, but there's no real ways to get at them in a certain sense.
The way you were describing it earlier made me feel like shadow work actually isn't appropriate until integral, because prior to that, even in green, the rightful role actually is to value equanimity and harmony, and therefore it's almost rightful to disown parts of oneself and parts of the world, parts of the shadow, essentially, and that's really important to have that sense of equality as a growth from the pathological hierarchical dominator hierarchies of stages prior to that. And then integral, that's finally when the integration of the shadow becomes appropriate and available.
And of course, by the time that we get to integral levels, a lot of prior problems would have been cleared up to some degree, presumably a fairly large degree, not totally. But even to get to that level, you have to be able to take so many perspectives and see things from so many angles and so on, that these types of things start to jump in to awareness. And you become aware of a lot of these otherwise previously items that you just couldn't see. As Keegan says, they're over our head because we just don't quite have the growth to get up there and see what's happening. So the number of items that if we look at them that are really crucial to help with developing countries, many of them are ones that unfortunately are just not really paid much attention to. And that's certainly developmental issues. And we have culture wars. Every day, these three values, at least, are at each other's throats. And we still are oblivious to where that's coming from. And so shadow work as well. But these are fundamental issues that are embedded in international problems. And it looks like the chance of us getting to those and actually, getting them to the surface prior to actual growth into integral levels is a delicate and difficult area. And that's really unfortunate because these are big causes of problems. They're not just minor little things that would be nice if we could take care of them. These are some of the centrally causative issues that are making things wacky. And strangely, it's not that we are aware of them and we're just struggling to work with them. We're not even aware of them. It's just not even there. And I found this odd. If you take just the general integral framework, and if you look at, a lot of its central elements, like levels of development, states of consciousness leading to enlightenment or awakening or awareness, sort of the five major dimensions, and of course there can be more, but five essential ones: quadrants, levels, lines, states, types. Virtually all but one, sometimes two, are unknown by the average citizen. They just don't know about them. Very few people know that there are practices of using states of consciousness and very, very well understood exercises that can help move you from, an isolated, gross, separate self-ego to a supreme identity with all of manifestation. These are 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 years old. Most people never heard of them. Don't even know they're there. And so there's like a book just called Human 101. And it would have just these fundamental things in it. How can we have a culture? All of the wisdom traditions maintain there are two types of truth: relative truth and ultimate truth. We do fine with relative truth. Relative truth is like water is composed of 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. Physics figured that out. Relatively true. Absolutely. But then ultimate truth is water is not made of 2 hydrogen atoms or 2 oxygen atoms and 1 hydrogen atom. It's made of Brahman. It's made of spirit. It's made of Dharmakaya. It's made of Tao. It's made of Godhead. The fundamental substance of everything arising is the ground of all beings, it's spirit. That's ultimate truth. Both are important, relative truth, ultimate truth. We have a culture absolutely bereft of ultimate truth. So that means we're stumbling along through life with nothing but relative, illusory, secondary truths. And we're somehow supposed to get happy about that. This is all Human 101 missing. And so we ought to have Human 101 and hand out versions of it starting in first grade and just educate people through these things. Then by the time that we got adults working in the State Department wanting to know how to go and help a developing country, they would look at development number 3, the stages, decay. Got to have these institutions. Okay, got it. And then they would go and try it out and start researching it and figuring out what's going to make it work and what isn't. We don't even have that. Like I say, it's not that we're aware of these areas and we're having trouble figuring them out. We ignore them. We don't even know about them. And that's what's so bizarre, because like I say, the amount of evidence for them is overwhelming. And to see over 100 models and in these charts, it's just mouth-dropping to see how many models are aware of these developmental stages. And yet it, for some reason, continues to be just pushed out of awareness. And so we have to, struggle and fight our way up that hill. And I notice that Gail and a lot of you have participated in articles that are showing how at least some sustainability organizations are starting to become aware of at least interior spaces and how important it is to track those in addition to the standard exterior systems theory, or this is how you build a fishery, or all those kinds of technical things, but that working with interiors can actually help support these exteriors. And so that's to some degree slowly coming along, but we've got a long way to go. And that's why the work that all of you are doing is so important. These are fundamental, not avoidable aspects of human being. And so leaving those out is to be guaranteed failure. So we want to really pay attention to that.